I'm on a horse. I don't need petrol, 'cause he runs on carrots.
As the world slowly emerges from the shock of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is a new crisis at hand.
The fuel crisis in the UK, gas pumps there running dry, long lines at the few stations that still have fuel tonight. They say panic buying is making all of this worse, and behind it all, a shortage of truck drivers and COVID-era supply chain problems there as well.
Europe is running short on electricity. A perfect storm of surging demand and short supply means energy prices are rising across the sector, from natural gas to renewables.
China is facing a new threat, an energy shortage, a crisis even. With fuel prices high and a lack of coal in particular, factories are having to shut down, and some households have no electricity.
From Europe to Asian powerhouses, an unprecedented energy crisis has engulfed the world. This is what's happening in China right now. More than half of its provinces have had to ration electricity in October, disrupting the daily lives of millions. From turning off elevators to forcing factories to work only during limited operating hours, China is facing its worst electricity crisis in a decade.
因为停电的问题，所以呢，供应商很多就是他们的排气啊、产能排气啊，还有交付能力啊，都打了一个折扣。基本上，很多在计划内的一些交期全部都要重新再改。
India is facing major power shortages as the country's coal supplies dwindle. Electricity demand has surged since 2019, while the price of coal has also rocketed to near record highs.
Many families are struggling to pay their power bills. It's triggered protests and even crisis meetings of EU leaders.
There is a lot of confusion as to how easy it is to ramp up, how easy it is to move it around, what had to get turned off, particularly in the cold winter, what can get turned back on.
You often hear the word unprecedented, but I think most people who have been in the logistics industry for some time have never seen anything quite like this.
But how did so many countries end up facing a power crunch? And what does it mean for the global economy at large? For years, the world has been dependent on fossil fuels like coal, natural gas oil, and other renewable sources to produce energy. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world, it forced complete lockdowns that disrupted power generation. For a year, most of the world's population worked from home, while the energy industry saw a huge decline in power generation due to the pandemic-driven lockdowns. The coronavirus did not have much of an impact on the global power consumption. As countries started vaccinating their citizens against COVID, they slowly began to open up. The global energy industry couldn't keep up with the sudden economic rebound, one of the main factors that has triggered the crisis. Global energy consumption has skyrocketed as countries emerge from lockdowns. This surge in demand for power has also disrupted the energy industry. In Europe, people are paying sky-high prices for liquefied natural gas. And in the US, gasoline prices have touched a new high since 2014. Power plants in India are on the verge of running out of coal due to shortages. Many states are also facing coal shortages that have forced them to ration electricity. Some regional factors too are to blame for the energy crisis. In India, excess rainfall has affected coal movement, leading to a shortage of coal in most of the power plants. India is the world's second largest coal producer, but bad weather in coal mining areas have affected its production. The thermal plants have warned the government that they are left with only days' worth of coal. India, which produces 70% of electricity through coal, faces an unprecedented crisis that threatens to derail its post-pandemic recovery. In Europe, cold weather is one of the reasons for the shortage in gas supply across the continent. An unusually long and cold winter earlier this year depleted stocks of natural gas in Europe. The price of natural gas in Europe is now more than 8 times higher than it was at the same point of time last year. And to make matters worse, Russia is punishing Europe for pushing for a green transition. Russia, which is Europe's biggest natural gas supplier, is not ready to export more.
В-четвертых, это практика наших европейских партнеров. Эта практика еще раз подтвердила, что, собственно говоря, они допустили ошибки. И оказалось, это сегодня стало абсолютно очевидным, оказалось, что эта политика является ошибочной.
In the UK, the fuel crisis has already caused chaos in the streets, although it is more about the shortage of drivers than the actual energy crisis. Fuel companies like BP and Shell said that Brexit and COVID-19 made many European delivery drivers leave Britain. But the UK, which also depends on Europe for power generation, is staring at an energy crisis as well. Adding to Britain's crisis is its low renewable energy production. The UK produces 24% of its power by wind. But this year, a windless summer saw the UK producing much lower renewable power than usual. Many parts of South America are facing complete blackouts due to the energy crisis. Most of the countries in the continent are dependent on hydroelectricity from regional dams. But droughts have severely affected hydropower generation in South America. Brazilian Vice President Hamilton Mourão has said that drought may force the country to ration power. Soaring natural gas prices have encouraged power generators to switch to oil. This is making oil expensive too. Demand for oil has shot up to $84 a barrel, the highest since October 2018. Countries around the world have called for OPEC nations to do more to control prices. OPEC countries have agreed to boost the production of oil, but only in measured steps. The increase in oil prices has hit Australia the hardest, which imports 80% of its petrol, diesel and jet fuel. Countries across Europe have been transitioning to renewable energy sources in an attempt to combat the climate crisis. The EU has also dedicated $1.1 trillion towards becoming carbon neutral by 2050. But the transition is not really smooth. European countries are rushing to switch to a cleaner alternative as the climate crisis unfolds. Europe produces its clean energy from 2 main sources, the North Sea winds and Norway's water reservoirs. But this year, both these sources are drying up. There's no wind in the North Sea and Norway's water levels are dropping. The delayed climate action is also one of the reasons behind the energy crisis. Analysts say that record gas prices and a low power supply might push Europe back to using coal. China, which is facing extreme weather conditions due to climate change, is also looking to become a carbon neutral country. But its sudden crackdown on coal has forced the country to witness power shutdowns. Now, to revive its economy, China is pressing pause on its climate goals by easing restrictions on coal mining. Some reports suggest that China has taken a U-turn on its official ban on Australian coal to meet the demand. The crisis suggests the transition to renewables will be more complicated than expected.
We are not facing an energy price surge because of our climate policy or because renewable energy is expensive. We are facing it because the fossil fuel prices are spiking. We do not yet have enough of that green, affordable energy for everyone. We need to speed up the green transition, not slow it down.
The road to global economic recovery might be the biggest challenge for world leaders. China's power cuts will further disrupt international supply chains that are already stretched by the pandemic. Companies around the world have been forced to reduce production due to a supply crunch. The electronics and automobile industry, which is already facing a semiconductor shortage, is likely to suffer more. Companies around the world say that they do not have enough supplies to sustain the upcoming holiday season. The rising oil and natural gas prices have already triggered inflation in many countries. The energy crisis is stirring geopolitical tensions and raising questions about how world leaders can fight the unprecedented crisis. And winter is coming.